Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Hannah. I'm with Tenbound, and I'd like to welcome you to this session today. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Please feel free to use the chat feature as we go through the presentation today, and the Q&A if you'd like to ask Nick some questions. He's going to save some time at the end to go over those questions. So make sure questions go in the Q&A, but keep the chat going throughout. And with that, I will introduce our speaker today, Nick Rathjen. The session, Learnings from Scaling a Sales Development Program, the journey to growing a powerhouse sales development organization comes with many learning opportunities. Nick has been there and has the experience. So we're going to hear from him about his journey and what he's learned along the way. So over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much. And hello, Tenbound attendees. My name is Nick Rathjen. I'm the Vice President of Account Development at Samsara. I am thrilled and beyond excited to be able to spend the next 20 minutes with you and discuss some core themes that I've learned over the last 4.5 years as we have scaled Samsara specifically from $10 million in annual recurring revenue in the fall of 2017 to over $500 million in annual recurring revenue based on our most recent earnings that came out just a few weeks ago. So my goal for this session and this presentation is to share these learnings with you so that you can apply them where it makes sense, where you would like for your sales development group. These types of conferences have always been incredibly beneficial for me. It's just, you get so many great ideas, so many different speakers. So take a lot of notes, bring it back to your office, see what makes sense for your business, and then let it rip. And hopefully it helps you take your group to the next level. So some quick background on myself. I've been in sales for 18 years, and I've been a sales development manager for the past 9. Over my time in management, I've had the opportunity and privilege to manage groups as small as 2 reps and have overseen just really small, scrappy sales development organizations. And I've also managed groups all the way at the other end of the spectrum with over 150 reps, 18 leaders in the management team, covering multiple geographies and continents. So kind of seeing the small, seeing the big, and here to talk about just, observations and kind of contrast between those two. My biggest piece of advice, and this is something that I wanted to get out early, for those of you who have decided you want to pursue sales development leadership in startups, is to choose your company carefully. I have learned through several mistakes, but sometimes you've got to find some companies that look promising, maybe don't totally pan out, until you find one that it really checks all those boxes. And in hindsight, my recommendation on how you should evaluate any startup that you're considering to apply to, especially if you're going to be the first sales development manager, a couple items here. 1, who are the founders and what is their track record of success? Have they done it before? Have they done it well? The second item, how much funding do they have and who are the VCs providing backing? Not all VCs, not all rounds are created equal. The higher the caliber of the VC, the likely the higher the caliber of the company. The third item, what's the product offering? What's the size of the market? Who are you selling into? And how do you compare with competitors? And then the fourth and final item, just around who do you report to? Will you enjoy working with them? Do you feel like you'll learn from them? Obviously, the individual you're reporting to, you want to just make sure you've got a really good relationship with them and find a great mentor to learn from, especially earlier on in your professional journey. I think too often there may be a title that you find alluring, but if you don't feel like you've really learned from a solid mentor when you're put in that position, sometimes you may find some challenges that you would have learned if you just spent a little bit more time being groomed under a mentor. Last bullet point here. I absolutely love my job. And I love my job for a few reasons. I get to help people launch careers. There's nothing that I find more satisfying than seeing people progress through their careers, taking them in, straight out of school, first sales job, and having the opportunity quarter over quarter, year over year, see them, advance in their career is incredibly satisfying for me. And get to do this while generating the critically important quality pipeline for a sales organization, and being able to do that with working with so many different teams at a company. So pursue happiness, pursue fulfillment over title and compensation. The title and comp will come with time. Samsara, if you're not familiar, is the pioneer of the connected operations cloud, helping industries that power our economy be safer, more sustainable, and more efficient. The industries we support include transportation and logistics, field services, food and beverage, to name a few. And these industries have historically been neglected by technology, and we help them with our IoT offering. And an example of the offering we provide is a video-based safety and telematics offering in the form of dash cameras and GPS tracking to help commercial vehicle fleets be more efficient. Obviously, we do much more than that, as you can see on this screen. If you're curious about hearing more, please don't hesitate to jump on our website, samsara.com. Through a lot of hard work, building for the long term in a team-oriented approach, Samsara was able to go public on the New York Stock Exchange this past December under the ticker symbol IoT. A few accolades that I'm very proud of that are listed on this slide. One of them being we were named the second fastest growing company in the United States by the Financial Times. And we also ranked in the top 20 on the Forbes latest Cloud 100 list. So very proud of both of those accolades. And I'm sure you can understand and see why. So this section of the presentation will focus on key elements of building a team. You need to make sure you have top talent at all levels of the group. The reps are the first point of contact between your company and the market you service. The managers or management team needs to drive performance, develop talent, and keep the group motivated. So hiring is a central focus for every group at Samsara. It's always a top priority. But to be a top company, you need top talent. And talent should be viewed as the ingredient you use to prepare a gourmet meal. As a hiring manager, you need to make sure you have the freshest produce from the farmer's market and meat from protein from the butcher. And hiring is that much more critical for earlier stage companies. If you think about a sales development team that may have 5 reps, one mishire is essentially 20% of your roster. So those early hires, you really have to be dialed in. You have to make sure every one of your early hires is going to be fantastic. That's also how the standard and bars will be set. So really here, when you're hiring either due to growth or replacing a team member, you have the opportunity to raise the bar of talent on your team. And unless you walk out of an interview feeling like, I need this person on my team, I must have them, do not hire them. It is fool's gold. Obviously, it's easy to identify people who are a bad fit and say no to them in the interview process. But it's the people who can do the job that you may be tempted to say yes to. Those are the individuals that you really need to be careful of. Those are the individuals that you need to decline in the interview process. If you bring them on, they will spread average and mediocrity across your team. And just know that good is the evil cousin of great. Only hire great. Make sure that it is a heck yes when you're coming out of that interview. To find the best fits for your team, think about the key characteristics you see in your most successful reps. Pick your top 3 to 5 characteristics, then begin to draft questions that will uncover if the candidate possesses those characteristics to ask those questions in your interview. you need to make sure that the same questions are being asked in every interview. Like, the consistency is super important. That will give you an apples to apples comparison across each candidate. Make sure if it's a multi-person panel, make sure the same person's asking the same types of questions to the candidates. But just consistency in question asking really is key. For Samsara, the characteristics that we really focused on were coachability, a growth mindset, work ethic, track record of success, and just a natural curiosity. We felt like if we had those 5 items, we had what we needed to with that individual. Running a feedback loop will be a great way to keep your finger on the pulse of the group. A strong relationship will allow for the most honest feedback about what is or isn't going well. Here at my company, we run quarterly employee survey cycles. We have weekly org meetings, weekly director level meetings for their groups, team level meetings on a weekly basis, and then obviously manager and rep one-on-ones. We also have our directors host weekly office hours that are optional for reps to jump into. And then I also will host a program that we call Coffee Chats, which is optional and casual for reps to sign up, but just 30-minute window, kind of reps can hop in as they see fit. Ask me any questions that they've got about the career, about market, just anything that comes to mind. Kind of keep it casual, and we created that with the intent of replicating what you would get in the office, given that we're remote now. But just when can you get some of that interaction that doesn't feel like it's as structured in a Zoom meeting? And so, best way to get just observations and feedback from the front lines. And so this portion of the presentation will address how to build processes for your group. An important thing to remember with process creation is that scale will break pretty much every process. And so what will work for a 5-person team may or may not work for a 15-person group or even a 50-person organization. So just be really clear with the goals of the process and encourage everyone involved to talk openly about what they're seeing. You need to create that environment where everyone can talk about the challenges they see and come up with solutions they recommend to fix the problem. So flag a problem, how should we fix it, and just get that dialogue, that feedback flowing so we can kind of forge ahead as appropriate. And during this section, I'm going to use the example of how we've evolved our outreach motion to prospects who matched our ICP, or ideal customer profile, over the course of my time at Samsara, where we've gone from 1 outbound team to now 10 outbound teams, taking on different segments, territories, product groups, etc. So needless to say, a lot's changed quickly, and we need to react just as fast to meet the needs of the business. So the first stage of growth is the startup phase, where a company is somewhere between that range of Series A or B. They're working on finding a product market fit. There typically is just 1 sales development team, maybe just 1 sales team, period. But this is where product and engineering, they've created a product that can solve a problem, and now it's sales responsibility to begin their motion to see how the market reacts to the product offering. And so for Samsara, or early on when we started, or when I started, pardon me, we had our ICP. It was 9 industries and about 4 personas. And we would highlight the challenges that those personas were experiencing and outline how our products would handle those challenges, how we would provide a remedy. The messaging, to be honest, was more of a blunt instrument. So sort of one message, this is what we did, and there wasn't as much specificity on a persona or market basis. We worked to really just drum up a high number of engagements for our sales reps with the goal of trying to find that repeatable sales motion. We also knew that we were going to be getting big quick based on some of the early traction we had seen. So we needed to find a way to put together a framework where we would be able to serve a sales group that would be 2-3x in a relatively short period of time. So volume was king there. The next stage of growth, or the next stage, is the growth and scale stage. So now you found a repeatable sales motion. The business understands that if we can generate engagement or opportunities with certain individuals experiencing a legitimate challenge, we've got a shot to earn some business. Now, you typically won't change your motion as much, but the challenge that you will be facing here kind of comes in two forms. The first is going to be, does your process scale with the addition of new reps? You're using the example of you've got 5. How does it do when you've got 10 or 12? How does it go when you transition from 1 team to 2 teams? Like, the added headcount will add stress to the process. Just be mindful if you're starting to see any smoke. The second will be starting to build out territory, segment, account tiering, just ways to cluster accounts. And so really important to get that right, so that all the sales reps can begin to become more specialized. All sales development groups are supporting function 2 sales. So we mirror the way sales begin to evolve their account segmentation designations. Accounts fell into commercial, mid-market, enterprise. Our territories went from 1 general US territory to smaller territories with the intent of having reps work in designated time zones. We also spun up a few specialty teams with the intent of applying more focus on a type of account, product, motion to expedite our learnings. One call out on this topic, to be clear, is to just be clear with your goals when and if you decide to break out a specialty motion. You make sure you know how you're going to measure success. And all of this needs to be time bound. So at the end of a time period, or at the next check-in point, you need to be able to say, yes, this works, let's grow it, or no, this does not work for these reasons. Be careful of the lingering experiment. Too often, experiments will go on for too long, even when there are early signs that we're not promising. The final stage is maturity, where your business is more in a steady state. The product is fully built out. Marketing has established brand messaging, and sales has a set motion. Now, there typically aren't as many major changes impacting the business, but in reality, there will always be a dynamic nature to business. So while the business internally may feel like more of a steady state, there are going to be external factors that are impacting the business. And so it could be, items we're seeing right now, more macroeconomic factors like Fed interest rate changes or political instability a continent away. Those will have impacts on your business. Obviously, I think we all felt it with the pandemic. There will also be impact felt by the competitor landscape potentially changing. Maybe a competitor going out of business, maybe a new incumbent coming in with a new way of targeting business and market share in the market you're trying to just own and dominate. But for business, this is where you're looking to retain and grow that market share. Processes need to be finely tuned, sticking with the theme of outreach. This is where your industry and persona messaging is dialed in. You've got your clear prospect touch cadence. Your campaign calendar is built out. A strong indicator of maturity is that you have a very clear understanding of what your inputs will result from an output standpoint. So moving along, I'm now going to spend a few minutes talking about the importance of standards to create excellence within your group. So early in this presentation, we talked about talent as the ingredients. Process and standards are the recipe to create the dish. From a standard standpoint, setting the tone as a performance culture, having clearly defined expectations and a background on why those standards have been created is absolutely critical. Most of the time, a team will talk about themselves either as a team or a family. For Samsara, we lean hard to the team side of the spectrum. Everyone knows their role, what they need to do to deliver, kind of what happens if they don't. One of the items that is clear from day one at Samsara is that we are a performance culture. Expectations are high, and every employee is expected to do their share of work to deliver the required results. And really, if you want to be a top 1% company, simple math suggests you need to be willing to do what 99% of companies are not willing to do. And so we work in a highly competitive environment, but for as competitive as we are, we're equally collaborative. You know, as a team, an organization, you will go as far as the entire group takes you. You know, not as far as a single top performer will take you. You need everyone to be hitting on all cylinders, everyone delivering consistently, and that's how you're really able to advance the business. Our account development organization measures performance of a rep using a framework we call our 4 Ps. These Ps are performance, which I will just call out. That is a capital P. The other 3 I'd say are more lowercase Ps, but then proficiency, professionalism, and process. And we use that framework on our biannual performance review cycles to impact reps' ability to get promoted. But really clear framework, really clear kind of like sub bullets, and everyone understands how they're doing relative to those goals. Now I want to touch on explicit expectations. This is about input expectations around activity level and leading indicators of delivering the outputs for the business in the form of opportunity volume and pipeline creation. A core element of expectations is quota setting. And just quick PSA here, this is an area I believe the sales development community needs to take a closer look at. You know, specifically, are quotas attainable? You know, all companies say that they want to hire winners, but you will turn people with a winning mindset into a rep with a losing mindset if no one can get to quota or 10% of your team can get to quota. You have to hire winners and put them in a position to win. You need to have a certain percentage of reps that hit quota, a certain percentage expected to miss. And this is how you'll see if you're setting quotas reasonably. You should also have a target percentage of overachievement, which shouldn't be well above 100%, but somewhere in line, 105%, 110%. That should be more where you strive from an average attainment standpoint. In a good barometer, are OTEs higher than W2s, or are W2s higher than OTEs? I'd strongly recommend making sure your W2s are slightly higher than your OTEs. We also have to have a clear understanding of performance management, of what happens with a rep who misses. Reps who miss, like the miss will kind of fall into 3 buckets. A small miss, you'll get a pass. You came in over 90%, no harm, no foul. Let's take another stab at it here this next month. A bigger miss where a rep may be landing in that 60 to 90% range. This is where you want to make sure you're documenting the concern to the rep. Let them know that they missed, let them know some observations, highlight a few items where the manager and the rep will work on from a coaching and development standpoint. The third bucket is if there's a really just poor performance, the rep misses the backboard, below 50%. This is when you also need to make sure that it is standardized and expected by everyone that if that happens, that rep may be going on a performance improvement plan. You really need all of these items, from reasonably set quotas to really clear expectations around, if quotas are missed, to have a performance culture. Lastly, you need to make sure that everyone understands why you've set the performance and standards as they are. With everyone understanding the why, you're able to get buy-in. An example of this for Samsara is explaining to the ADRs why we set the daily activity standards as they were. Let's take phone calls, for example. It was purely based on conversion rate. Looking simply at phone calls, X number of phone calls will lead to an opportunity. You need Z number of opportunities to get to quota. That is why we ask you to make that certain number of phone calls day in, day out. Because if you're doing that, you'll get to quota. If you're coming in under the call volume, you'll likely miss quota. you do 20% over the call volume, you'll likely exceed quota by that same amount. Everyone understands and everyone's bought in. So now, we're going to head into the final few minutes of my session. I wanted to share just a few additional closing thoughts that I'd like to convey before I wrap. You can say that these are helpful pieces of advice for a sales development leader who's earlier in their career. And these are definitely items I wish I would have learned earlier in my career in time managing SDRs and ADRs. So the first one is just to be your own person, be your own leader. Do not try to copy someone else. If you're trying to copy someone else, at best, you will be a second-rate version of them. Be a first-rate version of yourself. And you should pick up tactics, process, framework, ideas from people and mentors and individuals that you hold in high regard. Bring them into your company, make them your own, based on the product and market you support. But just be mindful of how much you try to emulate a single other individual. The second item is to look for issues on the horizon, not on the doorstep. Catch problems when they're small. This will allow you to be more proactive, to find a solution versus being more reactive when you may not have the luxury of time. You want to catch these issues in your group before any other groups spot them. And something that I constantly think about, just like Andy Grove said, only the paranoid survive. So always be on the lookout for smoke and try to jump on it before it's fire. So core sampling, skip levels, and expecting the process will really help here. The third item is with sales development. You're the bridge between marketing and sales. And you'll also work closely with a number of other stakeholder groups like operations, recruiting, and HR. So make sure you have a strong reputation with all of these stakeholders. And like any reputation, the core tenets are communication, trust, and commitment to the goal. And if the relationships are strong, both parties will be able to be totally transparent, and no one will need to take anything personally if there are observations of either what you need to be doing better or what the other person needs to be doing better. This allows you to just make the right decisions for the business. The fourth and final item is to rigorously prioritize what you're working on. You should never have more than a handful of items that you're focused on at once. This is especially important if you have a smaller company and an SDR team where maybe you don't have as many resources to support you. You should share what you believe your top priorities are with your key stakeholders and invite them to help you stack rank those priorities. And they may also be able to help tackle and take on some of the addressing of those priorities. But if you have too many, you will not be able to do all of them well. You will likely need to come back and revisit some of them sooner than you would like. So, all right, that wraps up my time here today. I want to give a quick plug to Samsara as we are hiring for a number of sales, marketing, and ops roles. If you're interested in checking it out, please go to samsara.com/careers. I'm also happy to connect with any of you on LinkedIn. So I'm going to stop screen sharing right now. But you can drop your questions into the Q&A chat feature, and I'll answer the questions you have with our remaining time. And just lastly, thank you very much for checking out this session and attending this conference.
Thank you, Nick. That was awesome. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions that came in, so we can just go through those. The first one, please repeat the 5 characteristics you look for when hiring an SDR.
Yes, the 5 characteristics that we look for in hiring an SDR. We are looking for, let me see if I can come back to this. And it doesn't need to be 5. I'll just say that, like, pick your 5. Again, it depends on market, what you're selling, who you're selling to. But coachability, like, do they take feedback? If you're telling them how to do something, will they be a good pupil? A growth mindset, meaning are they willing to invest in their development? They cannot be passengers in their professional development. They need to own it. They need to go do readings, go talk to people, listen to podcasts, listen to books, really invest in their development. Work ethic. Do they have hustle? Are they willing to grind? There's no substitution for work ethic. You cannot teach work ethic in my experience. Track record of success. Have they done something, even if they're a student, like have they done something where they really were able to show that they performed at a high level? And then just curiosity. In sales, I'm a big believer that reps are successful based on the information they collect, not the information they convey. Bring that information in, work with it. It helps kind of more targeting messaging, and it helps you just understand where that company is coming from.
That's great. The last question that we have is promoting an SDR to AE or hiring out?
At Samsara, we lean hard into promoting SDRs into our AE role. It is the preferred funnel of talent. To quantify that, last year, we promoted 51 individuals. And so, when I'm thinking about what SDRs want, and there's likely some SDRs out here, there's managers, directors, different people in stakeholding functions. What people want, they want professional development. Are you going to be able to train them and help them get better? Provide the resources, provide that launch pad. Are they going to be able to make some money? This kind of goes back to making sure the W-2 is a big, above the OTE. You don't want to be losing people for 5, 10K here and there. Like the cost of replacement, it never makes sense. And so if you give them the training, you give them the comp, and then you give them a culture where they feel like they're part of it, they feel supported, you've got the environment to really go get the top account development reps in the business. And so we will hire some external AEs, but really, as many heads as we can fill with the available talent, especially going into our AE1 role, it will all come from the account development team.
Okay, thanks. And then another one just came in. What are the major competencies required as you move from first line to second line SDR manager?
First line to second line competencies, and this is something that I've been giving a fair amount of attention to. We have an open sales development director role right now, but the competencies really need to be, communication is a really strong competency. Interpersonal communication, more broad communication. How do you just make sure everyone's informed? That's so much more critical, especially in a remote environment. The kind of core, I guess, pillars of what we need to see our managers do: recruit and hire well, onboard and train well, and then make sure that everyone's following the process. And so the directors need to make sure that teams are following through on each of those items, but obviously working through the first line manager, and then also just helping managers develop. How do you help up level managers? The same way that reps want to develop professionally, so do managers. So what kind of trainings can you provide? Third-party speakers. We do a lot of managers teaching managers different topics. We'll pull in. We did our manager offsite. We had an individual I have a tremendous amount of respect for. Ralph Barcy was our guest speaker, and then we also had our chief revenue officer, Andy McCall, come in and speak to the group. And so just bring ideas into the team, and then just a lot of communication and collaboration on where do we want to go get better as a group from an output standpoint, but also what do we want to learn, and then it's leadership's responsibility to deliver those learnings.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I think we're at time, and there's no more questions, so I'll just wrap up here. Nick, we want to thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom. And everyone, thanks for coming. Make sure you're following Tenbound on all the socials, and there's more to come later on today. Thanks.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.